10 years ago, I installed my first DIY solar array. It was midsummer, the sun was blazing, and the power meter was spinning backward. I thought I had beaten the system. I fixed the panels at a shallow 15-degree angle. It was perfect for the high summer sun. For 3 months, I lived like an energy millionaire, ignoring the laws of orbital mechanics. Then, November arrived. The golden sun sank low toward the southern horizon, and suddenly, my hyper-efficient system choked. Because the panels were too flat, the low-angle winter sun rays didn't hit them directly. Instead, the light literally bounced off the glass. Power generation collapsed by 45%. Worse yet, at 15 degrees the panels couldn't shed snow or debris. A thin layer of frost turned my thousands of dollars of tech into an expensive roof decoration. Batteries died by 4 p.m. The inverter screamed its low-voltage alarm in the dark. I was freezing in my own home, paying the price for a basic math error. The fix wasn't buying more panels. It was understanding solar geometry. I rebuilt the racks with a manual seasonal tilt mechanism. 15 degrees for summer, 45 degrees for winter. Don't let summer sun fool you. Design your off-grid system for the worst winter days, not the best summer ones. Perfect the tilt, or the winter will break you. 10 years ago, I bought into a beautiful blue lie. They were polycrystalline solar panels, shiny, cheap, and promised a lifetime of free power. I thought I cracked the off-grid code. But silicon has a secret. Polycrystalline cells are made of fragmented, melted crystals. Every crystal boundary is an invisible wall that traps traveling electrons before they can turn into electricity. In year 1, things looked fine, but underground, light-induced degradation was already eating the material from within. While monocrystalline dropped 1%, my panels lost over 3% in months. Summer heat over 80 degrees Celsius expanded the frames. Freezing winters shrunk them. Polycrystalline fragments couldn't take the physical strain, forming thousands of microcracks. Microcracks blocked the current. Blocked energy turns into heat. Soon, localized areas reached extreme temperatures. These hot spots literally began to melt the plastic backing of my panels. By year 5, the protective EVA backing turned yellow and brittle. Moisture seeped into the frame, causing the junction boxes to fail. The entire array became a ticking liability. I ended up throwing them away. The replacement, labor, and downtime cost me double what I saved. This time, I went with double glass, high-purity N-type monocrystalline, pure silicon. Cheap solar is a trap. Don't compromise on silicon purity. Invest in high-grade monocrystalline once, and let your off-grid dream run forever. I spent thousands on premium panels, but my output was pathetic. No error codes, no broken glass. Just a silent, invisible killer draining my investment every single day. Think of a string of panels like a water pipe. Shading just one cell is like introducing a massive clog. It doesn't just slow down one panel, it chokes the flow for the entire system. 10 years ago, I planted a beautiful sapling near the house. It was small, harmless. But as it grew, so did its shadow. A single branch was now killing my power. Because I used a traditional string inverter, my panels were wired in series. If one panel dropped to 20% due to shade, every other panel followed suit. One weak link, total failure. The energy that couldn't flow turned into heat. It created hot spots, intense thermal stress that literally cooked the silicon cells from the inside out. Shading isn't just inefficient, it's destructive. A shadow covering just 10% of the array was causing an 80% drop in total production. I was throwing away money every time the sun moved. The lesson? Use microinverters or power optimizers. They allow each panel to work independently. If one is shaded, the others keep roaring at full capacity. Don't design for the best-case summer scenario. Design for the shadows of winter and the growth of trees. Plan for independence, or the shadows will win. 10 years ago, I built my off-grid powerhouse. In the corner sat a massive, heavy beast. 12 flooded lead-acid batteries, breathing toxic fumes and promising cheap power. It was my biggest storage mistake. They sold me 10 kilowatt hours of storage, but they hid the rules. In the chemistry of lead acid, you can only use half of that. Discharge past 50%, and you destroy the cells instantly. Every time the battery sat uncharged, a silent curse called sulfation took over. Lead sulfate turned from soft paste into hard, indestructible white crystals, permanently choking the electrical plates. Every month I was a slave to the battery, wearing goggles and rubber gloves, checking toxic electrolyte levels with a hydrometer, and manually topping off plates with distilled water. During heavy charging, they boiled. Acidic mist rose, condensing on the terminals. Blue-green copper corrosion grew like a toxic fungus, eating through my expensive heavy-gauge copper wires. By year 3, the capacity was gone. The lights would flicker and die by 10 p.m. The inverter screamed its low-voltage alarm, leaving me freezing in the dark, paying for a dead system. I tore the lead acid out and replaced them with a single, compact LiFePO4 battery wall. No maintenance, no acid, 95% efficiency, and 6,000 worry-free cycles. In off-grid storage, cheap is always expensive. Avoid the lead acid nightmare. Invest in lithium the first time, and let your solar system breathe. I spent years obsessing over the perfect silicon solar cells, the best inverters, and the perfect battery storage. But I completely forgot the one thing holding it all up: my roof. 10 years ago, we drove lag screws directly into the roof rafter beams, or so we thought. In reality, we missed. We left open, blind holes right through the sheathing, masked by a thin layer of cheap silicone. Silicone is great for bathrooms, but on a baking hot solar roof, it's a joke. Within 3 summers, UV radiation cooked the sealant, turning it dry and cracked. The barrier was gone. Worse than the heat was thermal expansion. Metal roofs and aluminium rails expand at different rates. Every single day, the physical stretching tore the lag screws wider, destroying any waterproof seal. Because the solar panels blocked the view, the damage was invisible. For 7 years, rainwater slowly dripped down the screw threads, rotting out the structural rafters from the inside. Then, a major winter storm hit. The rotted wood couldn't hold the weight of the water and wind. Ceiling drywalls bubbled, paint peeled, and the cabin was flooding from the top down. To fix it, we had to dismantle every single panel, fix the structural roof deck, replace the rotted rafters, and reinstall the system. That's an $8,000 lesson on proper EPDM flashing. Never prioritize solar cells over your roof's integrity. Use non-penetrative standing seam clamps, double-seal EPDM gaskets, and flashing. Protect your roof, or the sky will fall. 10 years ago, a violent sound shattered the quiet of my off-grid home. A loud metallic pop from the utility room, followed by the smell of burning copper. My first solar inverter had just died. My math seemed perfect on paper. The well pump pulled 800 running watts, and the inverter was rated for 2,000. I thought I had plenty of safety headroom. I was completely wrong. The trap was the pump's electric motor. It is an inductive load. To start spinning, it must physically push against pressurized water. At that exact millisecond, back EMF is 0, and current demands skyrocket. This is called locked rotor amps. For a fraction of a second, that harmless 800-watt pump demanded nearly 5,000 watts of startup power. It hit the inverter like an electrical hammer. Cheap inverters use high-frequency ferrite cores and small capacitors. They can handle surges for only a few milliseconds, but a heavy mechanical pump needs a full solid second to spin up. The inverter collapsed under the strain. To fix it, we had to swap chemistry for iron. I upgraded to a heavy low-frequency inverter. It uses a massive iron core transformer with soft magnetic saturation that absorbs huge power peaks without breaking a sweat. We also added an electronic soft starter. Instead of throwing a violent punch, it gently ramps up the voltage over several seconds, slicing the startup current spike by 70%. Never size your solar inverter based on continuous running watts alone. Respect the startup spike, invest in heavy iron transformers, and build an off-grid system that handles any surge. 10 years ago, I fell for the ultimate off-grid myth, that rain would wash my solar panels clean. For years, I ignored them, believing nature would do my chores. It was a massive mistake. In reality, rain doesn't clean, it glues. Fine dust, pollen, and smog mix with light rain, drying into a sticky gray film that permanently blocks up to 15% of light transmittance. But the real enemy was bird droppings. Highly opaque, acidic, and baked under the intense summer heat, it physically etches into the anti-reflective glass coating. A single bird dropping acts like a clogged valve in a pipe. The blocked cell stops producing power, becomes highly resistive, and begins absorbing power from healthy cells, wasting it as heat. This triggers reverse bias heating. Localized temperatures spike to over 150 degrees Celsius, causing dangerous hotspots that permanently destroy the silicon wafer. Never use hard tap water. The minerals dry into limescale, permanently clouding the glass. True maintenance requires deionized pure water and soft, non-abrasive brushes. And timing is everything. Clean them early in the morning when the glass is cool. Spraying cold water on sun-baked boiling panels triggers instant thermal shock, shattering the glass. Clean panels aren't just about aesthetics, they are about system survival. Maintain your array twice a year, stop the silent power bleed, and harvest every single photon. 10 years of off-grid living taught me one absolute truth. When you compromise on your energy infrastructure, you are simply borrowing trouble from the future. My backyard became a graveyard of cheap solar mistakes. The math was brutal. By trying to save $3,000 up front on cheap silicon, low-quality lead batteries, and basic wiring, I ended up spending over $12,000 in replacement parts, labor, and ruined appliances. But defeat is a masterclass. The rebirth began with a new blueprint. No more guessing. We designed a system based on rigorous material science, proper solar geometry, and unconditional durability. First, the silicon. We replaced the degraded blue polycrystalline panels with high-efficiency, double-glass N-type monocrystalline cells. Pristine single-crystal structures designed to deliver peak output for 30 years. We crushed the shading bottleneck. By mounting individual microinverters behind each panel, we turned a fragile series chain into an army of independent power generators. If one goes down, the rest keep roaring. We evicted the toxic, high-maintenance lead-acid batteries. In their place stands a sleek, solid-state lithium iron phosphate battery wall. 6,000 cycles, zero maintenance, and 98% round-trip efficiency. No more leaks. We designed non-penetrative crest clamps and integrated heavy EPDM waterproofing sheets. The physical mounts expand and contract seamlessly, protecting both the array and the roof below. True self-reliance isn't about buying the cheapest components. It is about understanding the physics, respecting the materials, and building a system that stands the test of time. Build it right, and the sun will power your family for generations.